Hello, everyone, and welcome again to another episode of the Committee Reads. I'm your host, Kaiju X, and with me today, I have GVR, Nagoda, Bacon, and Ditto. And today, we will be covering Match 175, Godzilla Heisei, Anguirus Showa, and Rodan Heisei versus Monster X by Joshua Reynolds. Rain fell in sheets and thunder boomed loudly. In the dark and empty streets of New York City, Six eyes burned red as fire. An evil force was on the attack. From each of its six red orbs, bolts of an extraterrestrial power launched. They struck nearby buildings, carving destruction in the monuments of men. Glass and debris added to the rain that fell, pulverizing the vehicles that had been left behind during the mass evacuation done in record time. It stepped onto Times Square, striking the famous landmarks with clenched fists as it raised hell. The thing was humanoid in shape. The flesh that was exposed underneath ivory, bone-like armor was jet black and glistened in the downpouring lights lights of the city on fire. It had a tail that forked into two tips at the midpoint and ended in massive bony plates. Its entire visage was protected with skeletal armor, giving the appearance of some sort of mythological demon. On each of its shoulders rested sort of draconic half-skulls, and its primary skull was crowned with two large, intricate spikes. It was Monster X. The demon of space was on a mission. Humanity was its target, and this city will be the first of many to fall. One by one, populace by populace, Monster X would claim the earth for its unearthly masters. Humanity fought back, but no weapon of man could stop this creature. Weapons made to destroy man were nothing compared to the raw savagery of the intergalactic abomination. Now it was alone, left to ravage the beautiful city of New York, while humanity tried to dream up new ways of combating it. Then off in the distance, a powerful booming ever so familiar roar. That feels a little weird, but it was a sound.
Should have been a comma.
Yeah, there should have been a comma, yeah. It was a sound that stretched as far as the city's most outer limits. Monster X, in the midst of destroying downtown, lifted its head and turned around. Its thin, whip-like tail slapped the devastated city as it peered through the vast clouds of smoke and walls of fire. The noise came again. The alien tilted its head. It could feel the tremors in the ground as something ever heavier than it approached. Then a faint blue glow gathered in churning clouds of violence.
Churning clowns.
Churning clowns, indeed. Churning clouds of violence. A blue and white lance of energy erupted from the fires. It struck Monster X head-on, taking it by surprise. The alien fell back from the impact, its mask-like skeletal armor sizzling. However, it was only down for a brief second. Monster X quickly climbed to its feet and kept low, looking into the hellish blaze as a gargantuan form emerged. It was a form it did not expect. A living leviathan from a bygone age, a dinosaur by any other name. It was gigantic, a charcoal gray mountain of flesh and muscle. A saurian head with burning eyes looking at the alien as maple leaf-shaped spines generated an atomic power that danced between them. The monster roared, revealing two lines of serrated teeth hidden beneath its lips. A long tail lifted and fell behind its body, hammering the ground with tremendous thuds. Godzilla had arrived. Monster X's four eyes flickered with energy. It fired back, striking the Kaiju King in the chest with its gravity beams. They exploded, pushing the mutated Saurian back several steps and giving the invader enough time to charge forward. Its agility took Godzilla by surprise. The alien creature dove its knee up, smashing into Godzilla's stomach. Despite the impact, Godzilla remained standing. He pushed out with his hands, summoning his godly strength and forcing Monster X back. The alien lifted its hands and lashed out, forcing Godzilla's hands apart and away at the same time. Monster X then jumped up and back at the same time, driving both of its feet into Godzilla's snout. The Monster King stumbled away, snarling in rage as Monster X rolled onto its stomach after landing on its back. Its eyes flashed again, firing point blank at the nuclear saurian. As the giants rumbled, the streets began to shake once more. Vehicles across the battlefield began to sound as their alarms began to go off from the intense shaking. The pavement began to split, shooting geysers of dirt and rock that had been buried since the metropolis had been cracked by man. Spikes emerged from the expanding sinkhole, followed by a crocodilian head tipped with a crest of curved horns and single spikes tipping its nostrils. Massive tusks hung low from its mouth as the thing climbed out of the hole, shaking its body like a dog would to dry itself. Pass.
It roared, its sounds catching both Godzilla and Monster X's attention. The Monster King roared back, causing Anguirus to call out once more. A prehistoric giant tore through surrounding buildings on a mission to join the fray. At the same time, another cry came from up above. Monster X looked up, scanning the stormy clouds with its blood-red eyes. A flying form was silhouetted by the flashes of the storm. It was gigantic, a wingspan as wide as Monster X was tall. It flew down, breaking the sound barrier with a loud boom. In Monster X's distracted state, Godzilla took advantage. He swung his tail, clubbing it across Monster X's midsection. The alien fell back with a growl, striking the streets and falling into the subway underneath. As the surrounding structures gave way and fell, Anguirus came out of nowhere. He pounced the fallen invader like a mad dog, barking and roaring as it dragged tooth and claw across the alien's armored form. Monster X reached out, catching the saurian's jaws mere meters before they could close on its face. Rodan swooped in low, circling around Godzilla before landing on a rooftop. The fastest flyer in all of the Kaiju Dim cried aloud, his calls mixing with that of the thunder. Monster X managed to bring its feet up and push out, catapulting Anguirus off of it. The spiked quadruped flew past Godzilla, impacting the building Rodan had landed on. The flying monster launched back into the air as the structure came down like a house of cards, burying Anguirus in countless tons of rubble. Monster X began to stir, growling softly as its eyes burned with power. Rodan's beak opened up and violet energy gathered in his throat. A beam of pure radiation launched, filling the area Monster X stood in with fire. Godzilla added to the assault, firing wildly with his beam. As a titanic ball of fire grew in size, Monster X leapt from the blaze. It spun midair, whipping its forked tail across Godzilla's face. A small trickle of red began to flow from Monster King's nostrils as the alien invader landed right before him. It then brought both of its armored forearms up, smashing each on either side of Godzilla's skull with a resonating thud. Godzilla fell to a knee from the collision, eyes rolling and head ringing. Monster X lifted a clenched fist and brought it down, smashing it over and over on Godzilla's forehead. Rodan called out from behind and fired once more, striking Monster X's back. As a shower of sparks fell all around, the alien's upper torso turned. Its eyes fired back, striking Rodan with several gravity bolts. Despite the impacts across its shoulders and wings, the massive pterosaur flew in fast, his talons outstretched as he came down, slashing at Monster X's face. The alien reached up, grabbing Rodan's ankles with ease. It then dragged the winged monster down, hammering the ground with his body. A purple blast of nuclear energy fired up, missing Monster X by several meters, but causing the alien to release his ankles. Monster X grabbed Monster X by the back. No, Godzilla grabbed Monster X by the back, squeezing the extraterrestrial with all of his strength while pulling him up, lifting its feet off the ground in a kaiju-sized reverse bear hug. Monster X's limbs began to flail about as it growled, shooting bolts of alien power in every direction from its eyes. Pass.
Go to.
Where are we at?
As if
do you read along with us?
What?
As if answering Godzilla's calls, Anguirus.
Okay, I'm there. Yeah, I'm a bit busy right now trying to keep track of a dog in my room.
Gotcha. That's alright.
Yeah. As if answering Godzilla's calls, Anguirus burst from the rubble of the collapsed building. His arms, legs, tail, and head quickly tucked into his body, as he formed a ball of spikes with its armadillo-like carapace. The ankylosaur-like kaiju struck Monster X as Godzilla held it tight, hitting once and then bouncing off, only to repeat this process. Each impact chipped and cracked the alien's skeletal armor, and some spikes penetrated its dark flesh, causing streams of dark ichor to flow from the wounds. After several impacts, Godzilla spun his body and let go of Monster X, throwing it. The alien called out as it crashed through numerous buildings, rolling to a stop at the base of one of New York's largest. It remained on all fours, chest heaving and mist escaping its mouth. Every inch of its body hurt, but the alien remained valiant in finishing its mission of human extinction. Godzilla stormed in with a mighty billow, spines flickering once more. His atomic ray launched, engulfing Monster X in a spiraling explosion. Rodan lifted up behind the Monster King, firing himself once more. Oh, is it like shooting shooting his
Uranium.
beam?
Yeah, shooting his beam.
Okay. Because reading it like that is like it's like he's not shooting a beam. He's literally shooting himself.
Yeah. All right.
The alien was swallowed up by the expanding blast. The building looming over it began to sway as the support was burned and blasted away. Windows began to break, sending glass falling into the fire until the entire structure came down and entombing Monster X like it did Anguirus earlier. As the dust cleared and the rubble settled, the three kaiju champions stood by side. The alien opponent was seemingly vanquished. All three Leviathans let loose their iconic roars, proclaiming their victory to the entire world and the countless organisms within it. Winner, those three. But as their drawn-out booming calls slowly ceased, something else was also making a noise. A soft, muffled noise was coming from the mountain of ruin that was once a skyscraper. It was as if some sort of twisted, low-pitched laughter. Then, the rubble began to slowly pulsate like a giant heart was underneath. An avalanche of debris rolled down it as it began to part, and a hand emerged, clenched in a fist. Monster X was far from dead. It was very much alive. Now, its eyes burned even brighter with malice. With every breath, white mist escaped from both its mouth and the jaws on each shoulder. Shoulder-mounted half-skulls. Its deadly gaze was locked on its earthly adversaries as its arms extended outward. Suddenly, a pair of gigantic wings ripped from its back. Rodan cackled and took to the air, lavender lightning dancing between his three cranial horns. Monster X growled and lifted gently into the air before speeding up, meeting Rodan as he charged. The two collided with such force, a shockwave blew craters into the structures below. Rodan's beam fired, missing completely as Monster X used the inertia of his charge to swing behind the pterosaur. His left arm wrapped around Rodan's throat, and right clenched his skull. The pair fell. Godzilla and Anguirus charged in as Monster X remained standing above Rodan's back, holding the winged kaiju's head in his hands. The reptile's wings flapped like mad, but he had not the strength to free himself. The alien then looked at Godzilla and Anguirus, eyes burning with hate, before twisting the hand holding Rodan's head. The pterosaur's neck was twisted instantly, a sickening crack echoing. At that moment, both Godzilla and Anguirus stopped dead in their tracks. All movement from Rodan ceased as its head and wings went limp. The invader let go of its head and moved its arm, allowing the broken neck to fall to the ground. Rodan, the mighty pterosaur, was dead. Anguirus screamed in rage.
F in the chat.
Anguirus screamed in rage. The brawny saurian tucked his body tight and rolled, bouncing off the streets with immense force. Monster X's thunderous roar echoed throughout the valleys of the concrete jungle. It remained steady, standing over Rodan's carcass as its opponent ran with blind anger. I thought he was rolling. Mere seconds before the rolling kaiju made an impact, Monster X's arm lifted. Its flesh pulsated and muscles expanded. Across its entire body, the armor began to shift and become thicker, turning into a bizarre mixture of gold and dark blue. The thickened limb, nearly 3 times the size it was before, hit the bouncing Anguirus like a bat. The armored kaiju squealed as he was struck and sent flying back at tremendous speeds. Godzilla ducked his head, barely dodging Anguirus as his ally vanished deeper into the city, never to be seen again.
Wait, never to be seen again. Where
No,
they had
Godzilla
it?
growled. That was an extra bit from Dakota.
Okay.
Yeah, Godzilla growled.
turned. I was at the right spot. I thought I doubted myself. Godzilla growled, turning his head from where Anguirus vanished behind the skyline and back towards his unearthly foe. The Anguirus saurian bellowed in fury. Atomic power surged through his entire form, but his power wasn't the usual blue. It was red, a burning force as powerful as the atomic bomb itself. The energy channeled in Godzilla's muzzle, and the Kaiju King went loose with his spiral fire array. What? The air around Godzilla's spine's mouth and beam began to warp? Oh, okay. I understand now. The streets and rubble beneath the burning ray of fiery plasma melted into slag. A sickening parrot-like laughter came from Monster X as the beam quickly closed the distance. The alien body fell onto all fours, and from its shoulders, serpentine necks rapidly grew. Snapping jaws fired as horns emerged from each. A trio of golden beams caught Godzilla's immense, powerful ray. He was pushed back. Godzilla struggled, his feet digging trenches into the ground as he refused to relent until the unthinkable happened. His own ray was pushed down his throat by his new form of his adversary. Godzilla fell, his entire body blackened in the explosion generated by his own superpowered beam. Parts of Godzilla's upper torso were burnt and peeled off. The Mucosaurian was still alive. He roared over with a groan, bore witness to the final transformation of Monster X. It was different, but also familiar. It was reminiscent of one of his greatest foes. It was a Ghidorah, not a king. It was something more, something bigger, and even more deadly. A Kaiser Ghidorah.
What are we, some kind of Kaiser Ghidorah?
A giant of giants was far larger than anything Godzilla had ever encountered in his 60-plus years of existence. It began to march towards him, the very ground shuddering with each footstep and cradling underneath its gigantic feet. The Nigrosaurian growled, weakly pushing himself off the ruined ground. The thing's unholy shrieking made Godzilla lose his head game too. He shook his skull and radiation coursed through his spines. An atomic ray fired at point blank. The Kaiser Ghidorah's left head fired. It caught the ray, throwing it aside with ease. The three-headed abomination reared up on its hind legs, shrieking loudly. It then came down, driving its tremendous feet and massive girth into Godzilla's ribcage. Oh my! A sickening crack came from Godzilla's side as his bones cracked and gave away, piercing his inner organs. Crimson blood began to seep from Godzilla's jaws as Kaiser Ghidorah pushed off of his body, only to come back down with a crashing thud and shrieking calls. Suddenly, Anguirus' booming roars came from the side. A much smaller but extraordinary brave kaiju rushed in to save his longtime friend. Kaiser Ghidorah's center head fired, striking the ground before the brutish reptile. Anguirus paused for a moment before charging again, ripping through the smoke and fire generated by the gravity bolt. The monster lunged, leaping from the ground with his fangs bared. It came down, pressing his way into Kaiser Ghidorah's left neck and sinking his teeth into the serpentine neck. His jaws squeezed as hard as they could muster, but his teeth just weren't sharp enough and the jaws were just not strong enough to draw blood from the living nightmare. The Kaiser Ghidorah's other heads wrapped around his limbs and their jaws clamped down on his shoulders. Anguirus was peeled off of Kaiser Ghidorah with ease. The dinosaur whined, but the surprise attack allowed Godzilla to recover. His regenerative powers were already at work repairing the damage done by Kaiser's assault. The Monster King growled and moved in, grabbing Anguirus' tails as Kaiser Ghidorah held him tight. He pulled with all the strength, causing Kaiser Ghidorah's teeth to tear through Anguirus' flesh and hold chunks of his meat. The dinosaur fell onto all fours, looking back at Godzilla and nodding. Kaiser Ghidorah shrieked, bringing it up once more.
Bacon. Yeah, no, I think you may have taken that one on accident. Oh well.
Oh, my bad.
Sorry.
Still holding Anguirus' tail, Godzilla used his friend as a weapon. Anguirus' limbs and head tucked into his body as the Kaiju King transformed his body into a spiked club. Okay. The thunder's blow caused Kaiser Ghidorah to nearly flip backward as it stumbled away. Hydra crashed back down from the impact, knees buckling. Godzilla ready to strike Kaiser Ghidorah again, but the three jaws spat gravity beams once more. Hit Anguirus in midair, catching him instantly. Abomination used its beams to rip Anguirus out of Godzilla's hold and throw him aside. Snarling in disbelief, Godzilla rushed once more. Kaiser Ghidorah's trio of snapping jaws shot down, the center on the top of his head and the other two on each shoulder. A faint blue glow began to gather in each of Kaiser's throats as he gorged. Godzilla's eyes began to roll in the back of their sockets as he could feel his ray power being siphoned like a sponge does water. He reached up, grabbing Kaiser Ghidorah's neck and holding him tightly. A blast of atomic fire appeared in Godzilla's throat before vanishing back down into the depths of his body. The energy then detonated within him and exploded out of every square inch of his frame. Kaiser Ghidorah's jaws were forced off, tearing chunks of bloody meat with it. It backed away as Godzilla collapsed, gasping for air.
A lot of his power had been drained in but a few short seconds. He surely had to raid a nuclear plant in order to recharge after this intense battle. Kaiser Ghidorah shook its three heads before moving in again, ready to drain Godzilla dry. However, Anguirus clamped his jaws around its left rear ankle. Its head looked back, firing a gravity bolt that quickly knocked it away. Anguirus lifted on its hind leg for another quick blast of alien power, caused him to fall onto his back. His limbs failed as he tried to right himself, but his spikes had become impaled in the upturned streets. Kaiser Ghidorah cackled in ravenous glee for lifting up onto its hind legs. Anguirus' eyes opened wide in terror. He called out aloud, and Godzilla fired onto Kaiser's back. The atomic ray went without notice. The titanic thing came down, over 100,000 tons of raw alien muscle smashed into Anguirus' exposed chest. Instantly, Anguirus' jaws exploded into a mixture of blood and gore. Chunks of Anguirus' lungs and other organs shot forth from his tooth-lined mouth as the impact crushed his chest cavity like a grape. All movement from the smaller kaiju seized, and his head fell limp, flooding the landscape with a wash of blood oozing from his mouth. Godzilla pushed himself to a stance, bellowing in absolute rage. Kaiser Ghidorah turned around, dragging its feet across the ground to rid itself of Anguirus' innards that clung to him. The nuclear monster touched his chest with his arm, still feeling the tremendous loss of energy due to Kaiser Ghidorah's straining hold. The Hydra shrieked, its three heads then opening wide. Godzilla readied himself, but the gravity beams that fired didn't explode on contact. Instead, they generated a gravitational force that held him fast. He was lifted off the ground and spun. He was then dropped, smashing hard into the ground. Kaiser Ghidorah didn't stop. He used his beams to lift the Monster King once more, this time dropping him on the bloody remains of Anguirus. Kaiser Ghidorah seemed to chuckle as Godzilla looked down in horror at the bloody face of his old ally and most trusted friend. He refused to relent. He didn't have much power left. A crimson flash erupted from Godzilla's spines as he pushed himself to a stance and turned, firing a spiral ray point blank at Kaiser Ghidorah. The beam struck just beneath the Hydra's trio of necks, blossoming into a colossal ball of fire that sent chunks of the alien's flesh raining across the battlefield. However, as the smoke and fire dwindled, Kaiser Ghidorah remained standing. It was the last bit of power Godzilla had in his body. Kaiser Ghidorah's three heads shot down, gripping Godzilla by the throat in his hands. With ease, the monstrosity hoisted him off the ground, leaving only the tip of his tail to dangle and touch the ground. A blue glow returned to Kaiser's body as he began to devour the very essence of the king of the monsters. Foam began to roll from Godzilla's mouth in sheets as his muscles shrunk in size. His body was being drained from every part of his body, every muscle and cell, every fiber was being drained of every last bit of energy. His eyes sunk in and his skin began to hug tightly to his bones. The bulky frame of Godzilla was becoming thin and wiry. His lips sucked into his face, exposing his teeth that began to drop as the moisture was up. Within his mouth vanished entirely. Godzilla's claws began to fall from his feet and hands. His spine became loose and flaky, some cracking notes falling from his back entirely. After several months, Godzilla was but a husk of semi-transparent flesh, her skin clinging tightly to dried bones. The three jaws released their quarry. Godzilla's body fell, bones cracking and breaking upon impact. The Monster King was dead. Kaiser Ghidorah cackled in glee, kicking the shrunken skull of Godzilla with its left foot. The skull disintegrated to dust upon impact. Now there was not a new king of the monsters, but a Kaiser, and now it could finish its mission totally unopposed. Winner, Monster X.
Yeah, no, I'm actually kind of glad this one's still actually good. There are a little bit, only a couple minor gripes on my end, which is like, firstly, literally the first two paragraphs, like, or so have like, Monster X has 6 eyes, because that was that was like a common thing from Tom, I believe. It was just like, oh yeah, Tom described Monster X with 6 eyes instead of 4. That's great. Except for later when he has 4 again.
Did the Godzilla fan base not have eyes?
No.
Before 2010 or like before like 2015, even 2014.
Or 2010 or whatever. No, apparently not. To be fair. How many of them have brains? Answer me that. And then the second one was just, I feel like, I don't know, to me, the name repetition became a little more apparent when Kaiser Ghidorah showed up. I don't know, I didn't feel like it was like, if it's there with Monster X, it wasn't as prominent as it was with Kaiser Ghidorah. And that's about like my only other real like nitpick / gripe with the match. Otherwise, though, I do enjoy like the tone, the setting, and sort of like everything feels reasonable and in spirit to the characters respectively. Even with the idea that like, oh yeah, Monster X gets his ass kicked in. It's like that kind of makes sense, especially once the three of them gang up on him. Yeah, no,
I mean, that's pretty much what happened with like Godzilla and Rodan fighting King Ghidorah.
right,
So
exactly.
just like,
So that again, it's reasonable. It makes sense. This is how you treat your monsters with respect and dignity. So,
Yeah.
so it's like, and coming from MM, the Monster X hater, it's like, I almost want to say thank you for at least doing something like this, because it's like this was fun to read. I really enjoyed it because it all felt fair and in spirit to the characters, and it does new and kind of new and fun things. Like I love Monster X killing Anguirus and Rodan, or like killing Rodan and then like batting away Anguirus during his transformation. That's sick. Yes. So yeah, and kind of a great solid debut for Kaiser Ghidorah in the KWC, because for the longest time there was sort of this thing where Anthony didn't allow. I think if the transformation had another name, Anthony just didn't allow it. But this was the first time where it's like, oh, just do as you want kind of thing. You could have Kaiser Ghidorah, and you're like, yes. I can't remember the specific story. I think I just may have like.
I think it was just because like we got too many Ghidorahs.
Right, or that too. Combined with that, but it was just like fudge it, Kaiser Ghidorah, please. And yeah, no, I think this is again, I still think there's a bit of a name repetition issue with Kaiser Ghidorah's portion, but I still think it's still good material there. So all around, I think the match is really well handled, and just does a good job at conveying Kaiser Ghidorah's like the power of Monster X and the terror of Kaiser Ghidorah. So yeah, no, just all around like really good praises for this one. I was kind of hooked from beginning to end. So yeah, this one still holds up.
Yeah, I really enjoyed this one. It's not quite as good as I remember, but just because like that's just the way it is.
Oh yeah,
with like old matches.
Right,
but no, like it's very well written, like very well described. The action is solid.
Mm-hmm.
I enjoy like the sense of menace given to Monster X / Kaiser Ghidorah.
Mm-hmm.
I love how creative it is with like his transformation. He doesn't just transform immediately all at once. It's like he does the wings, takes out Rodan, then like transforms his arm for an attack, and then transforms fully.
Yeah.
Like that's awesome.
Heck yeah. So
yeah. What else? Yeah, no, like I remember reading this match when it first came out, and I was just like really enjoyed it.
Mm-hmm.
And like, yeah, it's a very, very good introduction for Kaiser Ghidorah.
Mm-hmm.
Agreed.
Yeah, the banner looks great, except for the seam in the middle of the rain.
Gosh darn
Kaiju
it.
X.
The gosh darn seam in the middle of the rain. Don't you know, actually, GVR, that seam represents despair.
No, it represents you being bad at Photoshop.
Yes, it does. Oh, my goodness.
Is the Shadow of Kaiser Ghidorah just like his copyright logo?
It's his concept art, so.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Which is also his copyright logo, so so you're technically right.
No, he was right.
Well, I mean, I use the concept art because how am I supposed to steal from the copyright logo? That thing's too small.
Just simply increase the size.
It is the same thing. You said he was correct with a few extra steps.
Yeah, no, I figured I was like, yeah, no, because once that idea had been pitched to me, I was like, I knew what to do because I know MM had asked me to make the banner for this, or it was either that or like I was like I have an idea, I know what to do, and it was like I think at the time. Yeah, I can't remember all the specifics, so my memory's a little hazy in that department. But I just know it's basically MM wrote the match, I did the banner, and I knew exactly that was like so because I think GIF banners had been like something no one had ever done before, ever considered doing before. And I was like, you know what, let's put this to good use, and did. And then freaking it's just like a whole combination of things is like the lightning flashing, which I'm still ultimately still really happy with, and then like the fact that like the Monster X's shadow projects Kaiser Ghidorah, which is a great not to toot my own horn, but I think that's a great idea. It's like you look at like the still image and it's just like you don't really notice it unless you look at it afterwards, like, oh, that kind of thing. So just, yeah, no, I'm just still really happy with how this banner turned out. Beyond the scene in the middle of the rain. Gosh darn it.
And then we never even showed Kaiser Ghidorah in a banner again.
Oh gosh, you're right. I think that'll change soon enough, I think. I hope.
No.
Oh, buddy, that's funny. But friggin', yeah, no. Had a blast, like, reading the match at the time. And then, and even now, it's still really good all around. And yeah, no, had a blast making the banner. So, I mean, not much else for me otherwise, though. Just still a match I'm glad still holds up. Who's next? GVR?
I already gave my thoughts.
Okay, that's right. Dakota, you're up.
Well, for once, Monster X didn't just die and just stay dead. He actually did something for once and actually won in an MM match, which is kind of surprising, I guess. But then, like, he kind of goes back to like just murdering things in humiliating ways later on after this. So, like, the match itself is like pretty good. The team up between Rodan, Anguirus, and Godzilla was nice. How they were overpowering him, and then Monster X transformation just turns the whole tables on them. The banner is good. Kaiju X needs to reimagine his images with that line down the middle still. I like the dust cloud behind Anguirus. I guess that is him coming out of the ground.
Yeah.
And like the lightning bolt doing the flicker and showing Kaiser Ghidorah there briefly is always nice. Plus, I think is that Kaiser Ghidorah in the shadow right there?
Yes, it is.
Yeah. Yeah. Other than that, the match is pretty good. Oh yeah, go.
I found myself being entertained. I found the action to be solid. Name repetition was a little bit much, but it wasn't too terrible until Kaiser Ghidorah showed up, like previously mentioned. I find the banner to be cool first gift banner, cool first Kaiser Ghidorah review on the KWC. Overall, just a solid, alright match.
Okay. I think the match was pretty cool. I like the banner. Pretty much dissected all of it already. But yeah, it looks pretty cool. This is the first gift banner, so that's pretty cool. Yeah, I like the way like Monster X is positioned, kind of like at the end of the street, and then you have like everyone surrounding him. So yeah, it's pretty cool. And I like the rainy like effect. Kind of has that like gloomy, dark and gloomy kind of feel to it. I'd say the action was pretty good. Like the match itself was overall, yeah, I think it was well written for the most part. And yeah, like everyone said, surprising that Monster X was treated like a pretty big threat, and especially with Kaiser.
And then Baragon showed up, and Anguirus revived himself, and they proceeded to beat Kaiser Ghidorah.
Yeah. The end.
Yeah. But yeah, I'd say it's a pretty solid match, and I think that's about it.
Yeah, no, just a super solid endeavor that I'm just kind of glad for them. Again, aside from a couple smaller things or, minor, more noteworthy things. Yeah, no, still super solid. Thank goodness, because I was kind of worried. I was like, will this still hold up as well as some of the others? So it's like, oh no, holds up great. So, anyway, and that said, this has been match 175. And we will see you guys next time for match 176. Till then, folks,